Okay, so first let me show you the switch port configuration on the uplink switch. So here we connected to switch 1, and we are using interface 19 and 20 for the ESXi 1 and 21 and 22. Okay, so here, they're configured identically, and just to look at 1019, just the regular switch port config with the trunk encapsulation.1q mode trunk. You can see we are using a port fast trunk BPDU filter as well as BPDU guard, and this is because the Nexus 1000V doesn't run spanning tree. So you can have all those command configured. It's just to the switch, it's just basically an AIN host. Okay, and it's part of the port channel group 10. So you can do show interface channel group 10. It has pretty much the identical config on there. Okay, so if we do show ether summary, you can see currently all these ports are in the standalone mode right now because it hasn't really detected LACP peers or neighbor. Let's go back to our vCenter. So first we're going to install the VUM on our ESXi 1, and we're going to do this manually. And currently we haven't really enabled Update Manager connection from the vCenter. So let's go ahead and try to add the host and see what happens. So right here under the networking, if you right click on N1KV and go ahead and add host, you can see right now we have 2 available hosts, and let's just try the ESXi 1 right now and say we want to do use the NIC 2 and 3. And here, if you drop down, you need to assign the uplink port groups. And for us, it's uplink underscore VEM. Go next. Let's not migrate anything right now. I just want to see the results. You can see it came back immediately and said the operation has failed. And this is because we do not have the update manager enabled. And there's one additional step that we need to do for this to work if you decide to do it manually without the update manager. What we have to do is to upload the .vib file to the ESXi host for us to install the VEM. So the way to do that, first we need to enable the SSH on the host. So you go back to host and cluster view, click on the host they're working on, scroll down a little bit here, this security profile. If you go to properties, by default the SSH is disabled. So we just want to start this one time. So click start, click OK, and then now we have to SFTP the file to the ESXi number 1. So the program we're going to use here is the WinSCP. For the file protocol, we'll leave it at SFTP, and the host is 172.16.32.4 with the username and the password. We'll go log in. Okay, so we're going to upload the file to a temp directory here. So temp, and now we're going to locate the file as on the desktop, software. So this is what it looks like when you unpack the package that you download from Cisco.com. There's a couple of the folders, and under the folder for us here we're dealing with VEM. You can see there's different version of .vib, and this is depending on what version of the VMware vSphere that you are currently running. For us, we are running 5.1. If you look up the documentation, you know this is the file for it. So we'll go just drag it across and then copy. Okay, so now we have that file under the temp directory. Now we need to SSH to the ESXi. So again, bring up PuTTY. We already have ESXi here in the profile 32.4. Let's open. Log in as root, then password. So first, let's double check on the existence of the file under the temp directory. You can see right here. The command that you need, I already have the syntax ready, so I'm just going to copy and paste, and we'll just can take a look real quick, is the ESXi CLI software VIB install, and then you point it to the location of the file. Okay, so do that, enter. Okay, we got the return message that said operations finished successfully. So if you do, just to double check, a command called vim status-v, and you can see here what you're looking for is vim agent is running. So now you know that we have successfully installed the .vib file. Now we can go back to where we were when we were trying to add the host under networking, and then add host. Again, we're dealing with the 32.4 here. We'll select the 2 physical interface we want to use for uplinks. Assign appropriate port profile or port groups. Click Next. We're not going to migrate this at this time. We'll do it manually in a little bit here. So click Next and Next. Okay, so you can see vSphere distributed switch has been reconfigured. It got the uplink added. And if we go back to the SSH session, looks like we lost that. So let's reconnect. And we do show module. You can see now we have module number 3 that just got added when we add the VEM to the ESXi one, and you can see right here server name is lab ESX1. Okay, if you do show interface virtual, you can see right now since we haven't migrated any virtual adapter or VM adapter over, there's nothing to it. But if you do show interface brief, you see here is our module 3, which is ESXi1 physical interface 3 and 4. You can even try to look at the port channel, and you can see automatically the VSM picked the port channel number for you. And here we have port channel number 1 for the member interface 33 and 34, and the status is P, which is good. So if you switch to the switch 1 and check on the status one more time, you can see now it's become P as well. So we know now the ESXi1 has a functional uplink in the port channel. So now we're going to pretty much repeat almost the same process, but instead of doing it manually, we're going to use the update manager to install the VEM onto the second ESXi here. So again, let's just try to add the host without doing anything. So here, the only remaining available host left is 32.6, which is our second ESXi. Assign that. Next, click through. And again, immediately we have the same failed message that we encountered earlier because of the missing dot, or you haven't really installed the VEM. Okay, so now instead of doing it manually, we're going to do using the update manager. So let's go to the plugin. And currently we do not have the update manager plugin installed, but we already have the server up and running. We just need to connect to it. So let's do that real quick. So here is the update manager that we have. So we're going to force a connection from this, and I already have a syntax prepared. I just need to run it. So first, let's go paste. Let's get under the update manager directory, and we just have to run this one command that force the update manager to connect to the vCenter. Okay, so now that is completed. Let's go to the vCenter and take another look at the plugin. So close that out. Manage plugin, and now you can see that we now have a update manager extension installed, and it's also enabled. So now we can go back. Let me kind of make this windows down here a little bigger. We can go back and try to add that host one more time. So add host, and uplink. Okay, next. And now we're gonna migrate as we are configuring this. So for VM kernel, just by the name, we can't really tell what it is, but if you look, it's supposed to be on VLAN 32. And again, it's on switch 1, so we need to map that to the VLAN 32 port groups. The next one is on VLAN 60, which is our ESXi. And the last one is on 59, which is the vMotion. So next is first the VM. The only VM we have on the ESXi2 right now is the secondary VSM. So now we need to migrate all that to the appropriate port group. So 111, 112, and 113. Okay, we'll click Finish. You can see right here it's invoking Update Manager right now. Before it wasn't able to because Update Manager was not available. But now that we have the Update Manager, it's doing what we did manually previously with the .vib install. But this time there's no need for us to actually uploading the file or even SSH to the ESXi manually at all. So we're just going to let the Update Manager does its thing until it completes. At the same time, we can go to the VSM and check. Let's see where we are with the module. It looks like hasn't been added yet, so it's still running, obviously. Okay, let's look at that one more time. Okay, so when you do show module, you can see the module number 4 has been added. And now we have the 2 supervisor and 2 VEMs on our switch. Okay, now if you do show interface virtual, and this basically shows you all the interfaces that the Nexus 1000V sees. And these are the interfaces that has been assigned to VMs. As you can see, these are all located off the ESXi2 because we did the migration during the installation of the VM. So the 3 VM kernel interfaces, as well as these interfaces on the secondary VSM as well that was migrated. Okay, so now if we go to the uplink switch and check the status of our port channel one more time, we can see both of them are now active. One of the things that we did not do when we installed the VEM for the ESXi is to migrate the host. So let's go back and finish that off before we can start testing. So now we go to here, right click and manage host, and we'll select 32.4 for the ESXi1. We'll leave the uplink configurations alone. And here, this is where you can migrate the VM kernel interfaces. So again, we just double check the VLAN. So the VM kernel interface here is VLAN 32. So we're going to place that under VLAN 32. VM kernel 2 is 60. So 60, and the last one is 59 for vMotion. Okay, so click next. And now we are prompted to migrate their virtual machines. And this is basically where you decide if you want to move some of your critical services behind the VM or not. So things like the actual VSM itself or the vCenter even. But for our lab purposes, we're going to basically move all of these VMs. So you can see, so here VLAN 111 for the primary VSM, going to get mapped to 111, then 112, then that moved to 113. For vCenter, it's currently on VLAN 32, so we move that to the VLAN 32. That is our test machine. This is also on VLAN 32. And here's our jump box. And we're going to move that to VLAN 32 as well. Okay, so next, make sure everything looks good and you can click Finish to start the migration. Okay, so let's pull up the switch and see what we're seeing here. And now back to our test machine that's also running the update manager that's trying to ping the internet and have that going. Okay, now going back to here, let's show interface virtual. And you can see that we have a lot more virtual Ethernet interface since we have migrated all the VMs on the ESXi1. Okay, now if we go back and just double check on the vSwitch, let's go back to host, first ESXi, under networking, and if you look at the standard vSwitch, you can see that there's no longer any VM that's on the vSwitch 1. And if you go to the distributed vSwitch, you can see all these hosts. For example, some of the VM kernels. You can look at the VLAN 32, for example, and these are all the 3 virtual machines on VLAN 32. So everything has been migrated over to the Nexus 1KV. Okay, the same goes with the ESXi number 2. If you look at the standard vSwitch, there should not be anything left behind at this point. I don't see anything, and everything should currently be on the Nexus 1KV. Okay, now we can actually start testing our configuration and make sure that what we have configured so far actually works. So the way we're going to do that, we're going to migrate our test machine 32.42 here. We have a ping going. So let me shrink the vCenter page. And what we're going to do is right click on our test machine and then migrate. Actually, before we do that, I want to show you on the here, same command, and just look for 42. You can see the host Win 2008 42 is currently located on the ESXi1, which is the IP of 32.4 with the V Ethernet of 12. And we'll come back and take a look at this once we finish with the vMotion. So change host. And want to change to or move it to 32.6, and it's just complaining about the interface speed. And we'll make sure it's high priority. And we'll start the migration. Okay, it looks like the vMotion has completed. If we go back to our ping window, you can see that we did not really lose any ping at all. And if we go back to our VSM and just redo the command we did previously, and you can see now the host IP has changed from 32.4 to 32.6, although the V Ethernet number stays the same as the 12. So you can see that as long as the VM is moved around, the host is being managed by the same VSM. The Ethernet interface number never changed, only the host IP changed. So right here, this gives you a little bit more insights for us where is the particular VM is currently located, and this is where it will help you in the troubleshooting. Okay, so you can see that using the OVA is actually easier, as you do not need to worry about the actual hardware specification when you build out the VM, since all those information is already embedded in the OVA. But if you need to have a complete control, then you can choose the manual configuration during the OVA. Otherwise, you can choose the installer option, and you just need to input a series of parameters and let the installer program kind of configure the switch for you. But again, all of those are default to the layer 3 mode, so you might need to switch back to layer 2 later. For VEM, if you have the update manager in your environment already, definitely use those to install the VM to your ESXi host, since it's much simpler. You don't have to manually SSH or SFTP files to the server or SSH and run the command just like we did in this video. But otherwise, if the update manager is not an option, you can always fall back to the manual installation. Okay, so that wraps up our video on the installation of Nexus 1000V in layer 2 mode. Thank you for watching LabMinutes.com. I'll see you guys in the next video.